Something truly revealing about making your own clothes is that you don't really know how they turn out until you wear them. You can do 2, 3, 10 fittings during the sewing process, but until you put them on and go out about your day, you won't know if there are any issues. Recently on the channel here, I made this 1860s inspired day ensemble out of a simple but lovely plaid cotton fabric. This was inspired by the sloping, romantic 1860s silhouette and the introduction of separates, often a blouse or shirtwaist of sorts, and the skirt. I thought this project had turned out really well until I wore it for the final photos, and can you see that? Let's zoom in. This waistband was so unflattering. I reached the issue that a lot of history bounders, I think, find, is that a lot of these historically inspired pieces are made to be worn over a corset. And all corset myths and preconceptions aside, we have to acknowledge that clothes fit differently over a corset. Therefore, without one, they also fit differently. In this case, my waistband had to be very tight so that it could support the weight of the skirt, but I made it very narrow in the historical style to reduce bulk at the waist. Without the strength and solidity of a corset underneath, the waistband collapsed. I fixed this at the time by opening out the waistband, making it wider, and adding a layer of linen for strength on the inside. Now this works better for sure, but I started wondering, did 19th century women have problems with their waistbands too? So I started looking for more portraits of blouse and skirt ensembles from this time period. There's actually plenty of them, across all sorts, including nobility and even royalty. I can't show you a lot of them because of image copyright, but I think this really shows how fashionable and popular this informal style was. And then I started noticing belts and wider belts, and then I remembered the Swiss waist. Now, I couldn't tell you where I first saw or heard about the Swiss waist, but it's very much ingrained in my perspective of the 60s. But I found it really hard to track this name, Swiss waist, in the historical record. There's some 19th century magazines that mention Swiss waists, but particularly in the context of something for children. There's corsages and waists, Swiss belts, or bodices. This is one of the frustrating things about looking into the past: inconsistent terminology. I can't explain why we know it today as a Swiss waist, but that's the term I'll be using today. Seeing it in photos really made me realize how important it was in this kind of silhouette. It really made everything so much flattering, worked together, and it really gave that romantic feeling. So I decided to make one, of course. The first step was to find a pattern. Although the purpose of this is to mimic a corset and emphasize the waist, by looking at examples, it seemed to be patterned mostly like a belt rather than a corset. None of my books had a pattern for this, but there is one freely available pattern online taken from an extant, so I went ahead with that. I'll link it down below so you can check it out too. I had to add considerably to the sides to make it my size. Keeping in mind I didn't want this worn with a large gap like corsets, and it didn't have the structure for waist reduction, I needed to be closer to my natural waist size. Adding to the sides seemed like the easiest measure so that I didn't alter the proportions of the front and back. I also decided to mirror the front to not have a gap or lacing, despite some extants having this. This was mostly for personal preference. The rest is so quick and easy. I highly recommend this project if you're wanting to dabble into historically inspired clothing. I cut these 3 pattern pieces, yes, 3, out of 1 layer of coutil and 1 layer of a scrap of black velvet I had. I flatlined these pieces together by placing the coutil over the velvet, wrong sides together, and basting across the edges. This strengthens the velvet by adding a stronger fabric underneath. Then it's a matter of 2 side seams sewn by machine and finished by hand. I also added a strip of bias tape to the center front by hand, sewing down the middle to create 2 channels. The original Swiss waist for this pattern had lacing at the front and boning, and though I removed the lacing, the boning will be essential to keep it from collapsing on itself under strain. As you can see, this piece has very minimal boning, and it's just to help support the fabric and shape. This project has been coming together so quickly that I can't remember the last thing I told you, but I think I've moved quite along. So the next thing I did, after making sure that the Swiss waist itself, you know, all the seams are done, the seams are finished, it's kind of ready to be finished, really. The way I'm finishing the top and the bottom is with some piping. I thought that would look really nice. So I cut some velvet strips on the bias, I sewed them together, and then I added a very thin cotton yarn in the middle, and that's just top stitched with a zipper foot on the machine. It's quite hard to tell on the velvet, but then I've applied that by sewing it right sides together to the top edge of the Swiss waist here, and then I just ironed it, pressed it very carefully to the inside so that it looks quite clean. I'm not very happy with this like little tip here, but that's what it is. And now I'm just securing it by hand on the inside. You can do this by machine. I just thought, you know, the inside looks quite nice with these like little whip stitches. So I'm just securing it all the way along with whip stitches. And then once that's done, I'm going to bone the very few places this is actually going to be bone, which is on either side of the side seams, at the center back, over here, because I folded this back and made a little channel, and then done these 2 channels that I sewed down by hand at the front. We'll see if that's enough when I try on. If not, I can always like add a couple more of these bias strips to add more boning in. It's just going to be your plain synthetic whalebone that I will file down and insert into here, and then I can finish the bottom with the piping again. Okay, and the Swiss waist is done. You might be thinking, wow, this was a very short video with very little footage, but it really is that simple. I haven't actually tried it on yet, so I'm a little nervous about it. I sort of tried it on by holding it up to myself, of course. And yeah, I'm just really praying it works out. I did a lot of hand finishing on this, and then the last thing I did without you guys seeing was that I added all of these eyelets. I could have done this by hand. I probably should have, but I mean, metal eyelets were around since like the 1830s, 1820s, so it's not unreasonable. I just didn't want to hand sew so many eyelets after such a quick project. So yeah, I just added these metal brass toned ones, and I can always cover it in black thread further on if I feel like it really jars the look. And then I was just thinking about this because they're kind of mirrored. I think I could probably wear this at the front as well if I wanted it as a decorative lacing at the front, because obviously the antique pattern that I used had lacing at the front and the back, but I only wanted one. So I think it's time to try it on. I just wanted to show you the last few bits I did without you seeing on camera, because I did a lot of hand sewing, late night finishing on this, and it just came together so quickly sometimes that there wasn't even time to pick up the camera. So let's have a look. Hope you enjoyed that little trying on together. I had such a great time making this project. It came together so quickly and I am so happy with the results. I am so happy. So after trying it on, I can tell why there was lacing in the front originally, because obviously if you've got two pairs of lacing, the advantage is that you can keep one laced all the time and one loose, or just to lace when you put it on, and you can put it on yourself much easier. I did struggle a little bit in the back, so I had to ask my partner for help just to bring one lace down from the top that I couldn't quite get because I'm not very dexterous. But overall, I think it's a great success, and I think it's a really beautiful way of adding a little bit of definition for like history bounding or day-to-day wear. Obviously you can make it of something less flashy as black velvet. But I just thought it would really fit the 1860s aesthetic, and I really want to make another one of these Garibaldi shirts, blouses in white with some black buttons, and I think it would really complete the look. I feel great in it. It's really great. I think it really smooths out the shape, and like I'm not even wearing modern undergarments, like I'm not wearing a bra, but between my historical undergarments and this, I think I feel fine and supported, and yeah, it's great. I highly recommend. The pattern was super simple, and I will note that the alterations I made, you can see that it does like squish a little bit because the edges meet. So I would say that if you wanted it to be a little bit more supportive and tighter, then for sure try and make it with a little bit of negative ease, I would say, but not a lot. Maybe make a mock-up, not like I did. I kind of get the mystery about Swiss waists now, Swiss belts, whatever you want to call it. I really enjoyed making it. I really enjoy wearing it. I think it really completes the outfit. And I'm sad they went out of fashion so quickly. It feels like they were only around for a handful of years in the 1860s. And then they got sort of adapted into sort of more like Basques kind of setups for the 1870s. But yeah, a mystery that I've absolutely enjoyed investigating. And now I've got a great item out of it to wear. And I can't wait to put more outfits together. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next adventure.